Hi, this is Lou, and I'm going to talk about a pretty focused subject this time, which is representing the untimely deaths of military leaders. Leaders are human usually, and so sometimes they die for reasons that have nothing to do with the war, and sometimes they die for war-related reasons. How do you represent this in a game, if you represent it in a game? So I've tried to categorize how the deaths of leaders are treated in the games, especially tabletop games. And here's a list. I'm going to cover each one, so I'm not going to repeat the list here, but you see there are 3, 6, 9, 8 items here. Perhaps the most common treatment of leaders dying is that they don't die. But I don't know all war games, so I can't judge for sure. I can't count. But it seems to be quite common. The leaders are there and they don't die. Another way, which is quite rare, is to treat the leaders as they were historically and have them die when they died historically. So in GMT's American Civil War game, the leaders are killed according to history. Well, of course, that's no help in most science fiction and fantasy games, and also it seems a bit odd because the point of playing the war game is to change history. So it's not a method that attracts me, but obviously it's been used in at least one game. Another possibility is that leaders die randomly. In the game Warriors of God, each player rolls a die for each leader to see if that leader dies at the end of each turn or round. The chance increases for an individual as turns pass, so sooner or later they're going to die, of course. Keep in mind that in that era, which is medieval France versus England, people often died prematurely. For example, one of the most well-known is the Black Prince, who never became king. He didn't die in battle. Leaders are also really important in that game, and this makes for a really chaotic game. Another possibility is the leaders die by direct enemy action. Now, in my prototype Armies of Antiquity, which is vaguely Stratego-like, the leaders make a big difference, but each occupies a separate hex. When an enemy attacks the hex with sufficient force, the leader dies, and if it's the commander of your entire force, you lose the game right then. In most games, leaders accompany other units. For example, in my prototype Star Princes, you can target the prince after you kill the unit he's with, and if the prince is killed, then you lose the game. Another possibility is that they die incidentally in battle. And I say incidentally, I'll give you the example. In Kingmaker, after a battle, a card is drawn to see which nobles die in a battle. If the name of a noble involved in the battle is on the card, he dies. Now, this is a representation of the chaos of battle and is a nod to the fact that in the Wars of the Roses, a lot of leaders died in battles. Another possibility is they die when they lose in a battle. In Britannia, for example, my game, leaders only die when all of their troops die, which usually means they have to be surrounded so they can't retreat, or they have to be with a relatively small force that can be wiped out in one throw of the dice. Now, this fits with a planner's game that it's hard for leaders to die, but it isn't quite realistic because lots of Dark Ages leaders died in battle. Lots of them. The kings were expected to lead, and of course, as they got older, they were not as capable as most of the people they were fighting. Another possibility is that they're killed by play of cards by another player. Killed by treachery cards before battles in Dune, for example, or by cards played by the enemy after a battle. Now, this is perhaps more desirable in some respects because it depends on the opposing play rather than the luck of the draw of the dice, although whether the opponent has the necessary card will often depend, at least partly, on chance. Another possibility is they die as a consequence of unfortunate die rolls after battles. War and Peace has a 2d6 roll after battle. On 11, a leader is out-wounded for quite a while, and on a 12, the leader is killed. What are the effects of death? Usually loss of a leader means loss of the bonuses provided by the leader. Sometimes a leader can even be necessary for there to be an army. Each army has to be led by a leader. If you don't have that leader, you can't have that particular army. Sometimes it can be worse. In my prototype Doom fleets, when your species leader dies, you are thrown into disorder, and you can't get another leader. Only half your fleets can move, and you're limited in building new fleets. So that's a disaster. That's a representation of an extraordinary leader. And there are, of course, some battle games where if you lose your general, you lose the game immediately. Now, I doubt this is an exhaustive list, but it's a good start. And my thanks to Andy Horton for some of the examples. Thanks for listening.